All right, here we go. All right, good morning, everyone. We are very excited to be here today to share some great information about birds, get to show you some birds from all across North Carolina. Let me share my screen here really quickly. We're going to show you some very basic intro information before we get started sharing our birds. But let me do this first. Welcome to Birds Across North Carolina. We are part of a collaborative effort called Science Across North Carolina, where we are engaging the public in scientific research that you can participate in anywhere in North Carolina and beyond to help scientists with the work that they do. We are participating today in an event called the Great Backyard Bird Count, which I'll introduce here in just a moment. Our collaborative is made up of a lot of different organizations across many different areas of the state, and we are working together to try to bring these opportunities to people through 4 major events this year. This is the first one, and we're very excited to be here today to share some really interesting birds at multiple sites. So the Great Backyard Bird Count is a big international event. It is an event that happens every year about Valentine's Day. So this year it started yesterday and will go through Monday, so February 18th and 21st. And all you have to do for this, it's really pretty simple. You are going to watch birds for at least 15 minutes. You record the total number of each species that you see. You only need to identify the things or report the things that you definitely know how to identify. So if you don't know how to identify every single sparrow in your yard, that's fine. You only have to report the things that you know how to identify. But make a list of the things you see and make check marks, tally marks for every one that you see, because you're going to report the total number for each. And then you're going to report your birds through the Carolina Bird Atlas. And this is part of the eBird network. So if you're familiar with the eBird app or the eBird website, the North Carolina Bird Atlas was built within that system. And so you're still going to use eBird, but we take you to just a slightly different place. On the website, you can see it there on the screen. It's ebird.org /atlasnc/home. Or if you're on the app, if you go into your settings, there's an option to select a portal, and you're going to choose the North Carolina Bird Atlas through there. And that way you can report your birds to the scientists in North Carolina who are specifically looking for North Carolina birds, but you can also share your observations with everyone else in eBird. So that's all you need to do. Watch birds for 15 minutes. Make a list of the things you see. Very, very, very simple to participate in this. This project, though, is an international one. It is a very important census of bird populations that happens every year and has for 25 years now. So birds are not really moving around right now, which is why they chose this time period to do it. And that means that we can get a really good handle on kind of how many birds are out there, which ones are where, how things are situated in the landscape. So there's a lot of information that can come out of people everywhere making these little 15-minute or more counts. So we, as the Science Across North Carolina group, are also really big on rewarding people for participating. We have a series of badges that you can earn if you want to participate in our events. And so you can earn a North Carolina Bird Count badge with us for this event. To earn the badge, you just have to do a few things. You're going to visit our website and the bird count page specifically. So that's just going to be scienceacrossnc.org /events/birds. And you'll find a section about how to earn the badge on that website. So you're going to click on the button to register. You'll fill out a really quick little survey with your contact information to get started. Then we'd ask you to complete 5 or more checklists between now and Monday. So again, 15 minutes or more. Mark down how many of each type of bird you see that you know how to identify. You will attend a program, and this that you're attending today counts as one of those. So you'll report which program you attended. There's a lot of other programs though on our website. If you go to that same website, there's a link to our event listings. We have something like 40 different events across the state, both in person and virtual, that you can attend. So attend one program. And then there's another little form that you fill out to claim your badge at the end of the bird count. So that's all you have to do. You'll get an embroidered patch mailed to you that looks just like the badge on the screen there. And so it's a really fun way to get a little reward for the work that you're doing, participating in the Great Backyard Bird Count and the North Carolina Bird Count specifically. All right, so what we're going to do today, we will be here until noon. And we are going to do team intros first. So as soon as I'm done talking here, I'll introduce myself and then we'll introduce the rest of the crew. Then we're going to just share birds that we see from across the state. So we have multiple organizations represented today in different areas. And so we're going to show off the things that are coming to our feeders and our habitats that we're in. I know the Arboretum has a mist net up, and so they're going to be able to show you some really cool up close birds as well. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we will answer them on air. So if you want to know anything about a bird, if you want to ask about the Great Backyard Bird Count, if you want to ask about where we are, anything like that, put it in the chat and we will answer your questions when we have a moment to do so. So that's what we are up to today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and introduce myself really quickly. My name is Chris Goforth. I'm the head of citizen science at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences in Raleigh. And my job is to do basically what we're doing today, get people out there doing research that you can do whether you're a scientist or not. And so I'm very excited to be here. And I'm going to have the rest of the crew introduce themselves. I'm going to call on you, I guess. Jessica, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Jessica Stitt. I'm at Halliburton Park in Wilmington. Halliburton is owned by the City of Wilmington Parks and Recreation, and my title is Recreation Specialist, and I'm an outdoor educator as well.
All right, Kathy?
All right, so I'm Kathy. I'm in the education department here at the North Carolina Zoo in Asheboro. So we're in the Piedmont, or the very center of North Carolina, and we've got our feeder cam set up right beside our treetop trail out behind Kid Zone. So getting lots of activity out there this morning. It's a little chilly around here, so the birds are nice and hungry.
All right, Adam?
My name is Adam Prince. I'm the Citizen Science Education Specialist with Chris at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. I'm set up with my camera. I'm going to switch to it real quick so you can see I'm at the bird feeders at Prairie.
Uh-oh, we lost your audio, Adam.
Better?
Yep.
Okay. You see, we got some feeders, some tabletop feeders. We got some seed feeders, all kinds of good stuff.
All right, and last group from the Arboretum.
Hey everybody, I'm Jonathan Marshall. I'm Director of Education here at the North Carolina Arboretum in Asheville. And we have some bird feeders that are getting a lot of attention this morning. We also have our licensed bird bander, Anthony Squitieri from Wild Bird Research Group here on site. And we have some birds that we've been capturing in a mist netting demo. And we're excited to show those to everybody also whenever you're ready.
All right. And then I forgot to say, I'm in Raleigh. I'm actually at my home, so I'm looking at my home feeders right now, but in Raleigh. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to show off some birds that are coming to our feeders. We'll just kind of cycle through different sites when we have interesting things to see. It looks like Adam's got a really cool bird. If you'd like to kick things off for us, Adam.
Yeah, this is the red belly. Oh, there it went. There's a red belly woodpecker, one of our most common woodpeckers that visits our feeders, but it just flew away.
And can you say a little bit about what that block in the front of that feeder is?
Yeah, so that is a suet feeder. So we have different kinds of seed ups. On the left side of the screen, you can see some thistle seed or some sunflower seeds on the left. There's a chickadee at that one, and the suets in the middle. Different seeds attract different animals or different birds. That's a nuthatch sitting on that little house there. They're a big fan of the suet and the seeds. So we have several different kinds of food for several different kinds of birds.
All right, do any of the other sites want to talk about kind of what your setup looks like? You know, what kind of seed you have, what your feeder types are?
There's no mess.
Chris, I could share. We also have suet here on the zoo. There we go. So the suet feeder we took some suet feeder, they're like cages, and put them on wooden blocks to make it longer because our bigger woodpeckers, we've got some like little metal caging there under the suet cage. So those big long claws they use to hold onto tree bark can grab into that. And then it gives them more space. We even have the pileated woodpecker. I haven't seen one on our suet feeder yet, but they need a lot of space they prop their tails to kind of counterbalance that big, strong beak of theirs. But you can see a lot of the birds like the suet. It's real meaty. It's like a beef fat, so it's a food safe glue. That's what I tell kids, to hold those seeds together. And there's a lot of the big sunflower seeds in there. So it's just really packed with protein. So a lot of the birds like it. So there we've got the nuthatch on there. You notice they're hanging on there upside down. And they're specially adapted to do that on trees. They will go, you'll see them in trees going up and down, usually upside down with their head down. And that doesn't cause their blood pressure, cause them to get dizzy. They're adapted to handle that. They like to eat bugs. So they'll be on trees, taking their long beaks, going between the bark, digging out grubs, which are like insect babies, the larvae. So then we've got some other birds. The yellow top feeder over there is just a general bird seed. So it's got a mixture of smaller seeds and some of the nice big sunflower seeds that they all seem to love. That gray bird that just got on there, that's the slate colored junco, or you may call it the snowbird. So we just have those here in the winter. The summer, they will not be here. They migrate. We've got the cardinal up there on the suet, the red bird, our state bird, with the big beak. And we've been doing some activities in Kids Zone this week talking about looking at the different seed types because of the different beak types. So that cardinal has that short, stout beak for opening those big seeds like the sunflower. We've got a thistle feeder in another part of Kids Zone. And we plant a lot of native wildflowers. So we have a lot of purple coneflower or echinacea, and we leave them up. We don't deadhead them with those seed heads. We leave up because those seeds are like those thistle seeds and the Niger seeds we put out for our finches because they really like that, like the goldfinch, which we get a lot of those. That may be, it's hard for me to see, that might be a goldfinch with the junco on that yellow feeder. And then we also get another yellow bird, a pine warbler, and they like the suet too.
Jessica, do you want to tell us a little bit about your feeder setup?
Sure. Cool. So this is one of our feeder setups. We just have regular seed feeders, and right now there's a mixture of sunflower chips. There's a little bit of millet in there and sunflower seeds. I've been seeing, today I saw a towhee, a couple towhees, a chickadee, tufted titmouse, cardinals, and mockingbirds, and I did see chipping sparrow too. Don't see anything over there right now. The squirrels have been scaring them away, but most of those birds that I mentioned are birds that stay in the coast year round. I do see on our other feeding station I do see a titmouse over there, and then we do have suet on that other feeding station too.
All right, Arboretum team, you want to tell us anything about your setup? And I do have a question for you from the chat as well, which is someone asked about preventing bears from getting.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Bears in your area, so maybe you have some insight.
Yeah. Well, the practice that we do here at the Arboretum with our feeders is that we bring them in at the end of the day, and then we take them out in the morning. So that's really the best way to prevent bears from wreaking havoc on your feeders. So that's one way to handle it. I've heard people have success with hot red pepper, but I think that the bears just kind of stomach that. That's better to distract the squirrels from the seed. What seed we have here at the Arboretum is we've got some thistle seed in one of our tube feeders. We have what's called a no mess blend from Wild Birds Unlimited. They're one of our community sponsors, and we love putting out the no mess blend. It's a really, really good mix. It's got peanuts and all kinds of good stuff in it, sunflower chips. And then we also have a mixture of the no mess blend with also some dried mealworms in the platform feeder that we have. And we have had a lot of action. We've got some birds in the hand here that I'd like to share with you. And also introduce you to Anthony. Anthony is with Wild Bird Research Group. You want to share a little bit about what you do here?
Good morning. Yeah, as Jonathan mentioned, my name is Anthony Squitieri, and I work with Wild Bird Research Group. We're a nonprofit based out of New Jersey, and we have a southern chapter here in North Carolina as well. I serve as the regional coordinator of the Southern Appalachians, so we kind of manage our NC projects. So I'm not sure if we covered, but we actually have an active research station further down on the property along Bent Creek in the Azalea Garden, and that is a part of the MAPS program, which bans birds exclusively during the breeding season and primarily focuses on migratory birds. So birds that we're not seeing year round, residents like cardinals. This project's focusing more on warblers or any kind of neotropical migrants. But we also do programs and demonstrations up here and elsewhere throughout the campus, and that's what we have going on today. And the food that has been out has been very active. The birds are all over the place this morning, so we're getting some pretty great stuff.
And so Tony, the focus of the MAPS is those migratory birds, but when you go catch a bird that stays put, like a tufted titmouse, you'll ban that also.
Correct.
And we happened to find one of those that you banned it, or Andrew Laughlin from UNCA had banned it a couple of years ago.
Yeah, totally. So I guess depending on the timing of things, I guess we can start with that, if that makes sense. We've got other birds that are in the queue as well, but we may as well, because this one's banded, and that's why we're here. I can get into the weeds depending on time, like explain why we ban birds and what the purpose of banding is.
Yeah, share a little bit about that.
And some of the other research projects. So at the core, so bird banding is just a research method. It's just a tool that's used to determine or answer whatever questions you might have. So a lot of birds are dimorphic, meaning the males and the females look different. And so the opposite would be monomorphic. An example is cardinal, classic example. Males and females look, they're visibly different. You can determine that from field observation. You don't need to have the bird in hand to determine that. Other birds like, blue jay, easy example. The males and the females from just mere field observation look identical. There's slight difference in brightness of blue, but for the sake of the example, they're the same. So in hand, we can take a series of measurements and look at a series of plumage characteristics and determine the sex of the bird in hand. And then also age of bird. Often baby birds are different in color than adult birds. So like a young cardinal, a juvenile cardinal might look like an adult female cardinal. So juvenile birds are usually pretty drab in color, brownish. So in in field observation, you can determine that just by looking at them with binoculars. But that's kind of about it. You can just be like, all right, that's a young bird and that's an older bird. But to get down to the exact age, you need to have them in hand. And so again, with a number of measurements and taking data and plumage characteristics, we can determine pretty accurately how old the bird is. Now, up to a certain point. So at a certain point, all the birds are going to have the exact same plumage. There's not going to be any inconsistencies. So how do you tell how old that bird is? Well, we put a band on it. So if we band a bird and we know it's in this case, we use the term hatch-year bird, a juvenile bird, we can then recapture that bird year after year, all the way up to, potentially 7 years old. And we can know that bird is 7 years old by looking at the band record. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to tell a 7-year-old bird from a 2-year-old bird. And so it's a good segue to this bird, but I'll just extrapolate a little more. So that's at its core, like what you can, very core tenets of banding. You take that and you can apply it to any research question that you have. If it's a particular species, if it's a whole population study, if you're trying to study a particular habitat, it's just a method to answer questions. And so the MAPS program monitors neotropical migrants, and we also band residents. So one of our resident species here is the tufted titmouse, and we don't discriminate. We'll band anything that comes down to the nets. And so we have had the nets open for maybe an hour now. It's been really productive, and we got a banded bird. And so we didn't band this bird up here. We banded it, I don't know, how far do you think that is? Half mile?
Yeah, half mile.
Half mile
As the titmouse flies.
As the titmouse flies downhill, and we got it up here. So we keep the birds in these bags. They're poly cotton blend. They're really lightweight, really breathable. And this is just kind of like a temporary holding situation. Since they're breathable, we can set them up on a string, and it's kind of like blinders for falconry or horses. It just kind of calms them down just to have a little bit of separation, division between the bird and the human. So what I've got here is tufted titmouse. I don't know how close I should be getting or what's in focus and whatnot.
You can get a little bit closer. Yeah.
So some birds are more vocal than others, but typically the calmer we are, the calmer they are. So I'm talking a little loud just so everyone can hear me, but titmice are notoriously squirmy and very vocal. So I have it in what's called the bander's grip right now. And so its head is in between my fingers, and then I just have it kind of loosely but securely grasped in my hand. And so what this allows me to do is kind of open up the wing, take wing measurements, look at all the plumage characteristics. And then of course, I'll just grab a pair of pliers here. These are our banding pliers. I don't know if that's visible, but since this bird's already banded, I don't need to put it on. I don't know if you can see that band. Is that visible?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. That shiny thing, that little piece of jewelry there, that is the band. Great, thank you. And then here, let's get the 1Bs. And so on this strand, these are individual bands on this metal wire. So each one has a unique number on it, and that's its just identification code for the lifespan of the bird. And so we put it on with these pliers here. So we have records of this bird, and this bird was banded in 2020 down at the Azalea Garden here. And so when it was banded, it was determined to be a hatch-eared bird. And so it had kind of like a fleshy tone eye ring around the eye, where right now you can see it has nice, pretty, looks like black eyelashes. That was like a flesh tone. And then around the mouth, we call it the gape, right at the corner of the mouth, it was also kind of that fleshy yellow color. And then it had other just very standard juvenile characteristics. So this bird was hatchier then, so 1 year old. So now we would, in the book, we would classify it as an after 2nd year bird.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I think we'll throw it over to some of the other sites to see what they've got going on, but we'll check back in a little later and share some other birds that we have in hand. And if anyone has any questions for Tony, they could add those to the chat and we'd be happy to answer them.
Baby. It still sounds like a baby.
That titmouse sounds really, really displeased. All right. Anyone else have a bird they'd like to share? Seen some things on Adam's feeder.
Yeah, I've got some European starlings, not a native species, but still that we get. On my list so far, I have 21 species. I've just been in this one spot for about 30 minutes. So we've got a lot of action going on. European starlings, known for their murmurations, for their large groups, they'll fly in hundreds and thousands, swarming, and it's really, really pretty. Oh, now we're empty. I'm going to switch over to our tabletop feeders. So again, we don't always get the visitors that we like to see. You know, we have a squirrel. Squirrels are everywhere. We also will sometimes see groundhogs, deer coming to our feeders. These tabletop feeders are really good because a lot of sparrows don't like to sit on perches on bird feeders. So these tabletops are really popular with our sparrows. So our towhees, juncos, I see a lot of song sparrows and white-throated sparrows. So it's good to have a diversity. And there's a nuthatch up there. There's a female cardinal on the left.
All right, anyone else have any interesting birds at their feeders? I'm gonna switch over to the zoo for a moment, see if we can see anything. And then we'll switch back to the Arboretum to show us another bird.
You want to take this one out?
There we go.
So we've got an American goldfinch here. And if you see them in the summertime, you'll see that the males have a really, really bright color, but it's a little more muted in the winter time. I guess it's better to be a little more muted and not, show yourself off so much when there's less tree cover and all that business, and no reason to attract the ladies in the winter time.
Every time.
Yeah, let's see. So you'll notice, all right, so this is my favorite demonstration bird for education purposes. They are just very sweet, calm birds. You can see how big of a difference it is from the titmouse.
Mm-hmm.
Give this to you.
Thank you.
So I don't know framing here. I'm just going to check the link real quick.
So I think just so we can let the birds go, we'll just do.
So this looks like an adult female. So I'll show you. I have it in Bander's grip right now, and I'm just looking at the wing to see if I see what we call molt limits or inconsistencies. And so males, even this time of year, would be a lot brighter yellow. And yeah. So I'm just checking the feathers here, just trying to see if I see anything super different. It all looks pretty good. But yeah, here's the female goldfinch.
Don't want to extract that.
And I'm just trying to get, so in the photographer's grip, I'm pinching the feet together. And then I'm just applying a little bit of pressure at the joint behind what's technically their ankle, but we'll call it the knee.
Oh, look at you.
And so they are just really calm, sweet birds. The males will have a lot darker black wings, and the females will have a lot more muted black, kind of dark brown, and then obviously a lot more yellow on the males year round. And so this time of year, birds are not being born. So no birds have been born yet. So the only age options we have for birds right now are either second year, because it's their second year, or after second year. So we would just call this one an after second year female. And so I'll probably let her go. She's tiny and it's a little cold out. And so maybe we could let one of our our staff over here let this little lady go. All right, we've got Katie, and she's gonna let the goldfinch go for us. So she's taking it in Bander's grip, and then she just creates a little platform with her other hand, like a launch pad. It takes right off. Cool. Yeah, and we can go through as many. We have,
This is the last one.
great. So we've got 2, including this one. I guess I can, well, I assume people heard, but I guess I can have we can let people guess. People didn't hear what this bird was. And so as I'm taking birds out of the bag, I'm just keeping the bag close to my body so that it doesn't squirm out. Wrens, for instance, are they're escape artists. They can squirm out of anyone's hand really easily. All right, toss this egg. All right, if anyone didn't hear what this bird is, let people guess for a minute, and then I will disclose its name. All right, well, if anyone guessed white-breasted nuthatch, you are correct. So we've got a pretty good diversity of birds here. The staff has quite a buffet variety of food in there, so we're attracting a lot of different types of birds. Nuthatches are personally one of my favorite groups of birds. In the mountains here, we are fortunate enough to have 3 different species. So we've got the white-breasted nuthatch, the red-breasted nuthatch, and then the brown-headed nuthatch, which is pretty cool. So just real quick running through with this bird as well. This is an example of a very slightly dimorphic bird. So the males and the females are different in appearance, but it's not really obvious like a cardinal. So what we have here is a male, and we can tell that because its crown and nape here are jet black. Females would have like a slate blue color, not quite as bright as this, a darker version of the back feathers. So we've got a male here. And then also, this is an older male. I'll just get it in Bander's grip. So I'm looking at the wing here, and it's all pretty uniform. There's not a high contrast in the feathers. I assume it's really hard to see, but so this is another example of an after second year bird. It was not born last year. It was born before 2021. Yeah, and they're really cute sounding too. So, somebody want to let this one go?
Abby?
Yeah.
Don't know how,
Yeah,
but
I'll show you.
can. All right.
All right, so
Let's go.
Abby's gonna mimic the way I have it. So in the Bander's script, so you can just make a peace sign,
All right.
and the head of the bird just sits kind of on top of these 2 fingers. And you're applying just enough pressure so that the head doesn't slip out from below, and then the rest of your hand is just kind of creating a cage.
Okay, like that kind of.
So
right.
we'll start with the head.
Hi, I know.
All right, so peace sign. I'll guide the head above, and then you're squeezing a little bit here,
Okay.
and getting the rest of the body in all those hands. That's it. And then she'll create a platform whenever you're ready.
Cute.
Take off.
Hello. All right, you ready to go? All
All right.
Yay.
I'll
Well,
send you some pictures.
Thank
Got
you.
one more.
I was hoping.
All right. I don't think anyone has heard what this one is, but I think you all know. All right. Just to be warned, this bird is going to be vocal. So you've gotten an array of vocalizations, attitudes, personalities. Titmouse is pretty vocal. The goldfinch is really calm. Nuthatch is, mild. This bird can make a lot of noise, but it's not in pain. It's not being hurt or anything. It's just a boisterous bird. All right. I say that, it's not making sound. All right, so I'm going to show you that. And it's body here. Okay. All right. There it goes.
There it is.
All right. Well, that should have given it away. Well, if you guess red-bellied woodpecker, you are correct. This might be the reddest belly I've ever seen on one. It even comes up the flank, and the head is red as well. I know this is really loud. The head's completely red too, so that's indicating that it is a male.
So this is not the same woodpecker as a red-headed woodpecker?
This is not a red-headed woodpecker. So the red-headed woodpecker, we technically have them here. I guess they're not common exactly where we are, but they have a complete red head. It even goes down to the throat, and they have black wings that's sparring. So this is a red-bellied woodpecker, and this is an old bird. This is I'd say at least 3 years old. I have to open up the book. So the cool thing with woodpeckers is that I was kind of mentioning before is that usually at about 2 years old, the bird's plumage is going to be completely uniform. You're not going to be able to see any inconsistencies in its plumage. But with woodpeckers, you can accurately age them up to 4 or 5 years, depending on the species. And so it just takes a little while, a little longer to have the complete maturation in plumage. So this is definitely an old male. I see a little difference in some of these here. I assume it's really hard to see, but we're basically looking at different shades of black, which a lot of this is pretty subjective. I've got a diagram pulled up here. Yeah. So I'll look one more time. So I've got one replaced. Well, without reading through all of this right now, but what Rebecca has in front of us is kind of like the Bible of bird banding. It's this very extensive text. It's the bird banding guide. So this has all the information. This isn't a book you would take out in the field with you while you had your binoculars and you're trying to ID birds in the field. This is exclusively for identifying age and sex of birds in hand. So it goes into a lot of depth about all of that. So what does A tell us? In any case, yeah, woodpeckers are really cool in that you can age them a lot older. So this is certainly at least a 30-year-old bird. Another cool thing about them is in the hand, you can really feel it. The tips of their tail feathers, which we call rectrices, are really, really strong. The rachis, the shaft of the feather, the tail feather, is really stiff. And so the reason they have that is because that's their pivot point. So when they're on a tree and they're pecking at a tree, they use their tail and they press it against the tree, and that allows them to have that kind of pivot point, that support.
Okay, it's fresh juvenile.
Or that should be something else.
I'd never noticed that they have red eyes.
Adults.
Oh wow, they do.
Yeah, really bright red eyes. Another cool thing about woodpeckers that the rest of the birds that we've had so far don't have is that their feet are their toes are in a different arrangement. And so it's kind of like a box arrangement. It's 2 on the bottom and 2 on the top, and that's called zygodactyl. So all the other birds we just had to have an anisodactyl, and that arrangement, trying to get the toes open for you. There you go. Really long, right? And so you can see they just hook right into the bark. And so, yeah, 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top, and that allows them to move up and down and around tree bark a lot better. Whereas the other birds, just like chickens or any of these other perching birds, it's 3 in the front and 1 in the back. And that's a lot better for just perching on branches, kind of hopping around on the ground. But this zygodactyl arrangement is a lot better for trees.
Now, I've had people ask me before, why is this bird called a red-bellied woodpecker? Because people really see the red on its head.
Yeah.
But as you've got it here close, I can really see those reddish feathers there.
Yeah, this is an old bird. Yeah, don't know what else. They have so luckily, so sometimes in the net they can be tricky to take out because woodpeckers have really long tongues, and their tongues actually wrap around their skull a bit, and that's because they use their tongues to probe into trees to get grubs out. And on the tip of their tongue, it's barbed, almost like the hooks of Velcro. So these tiny, like rear-facing fishing hooks, essentially. So they get caught in the net. It can sometimes get a little tangled, but this guy, there was no problem. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of any cool woodpecker.
Well, if we catch a downy or somebody else later, we can throw it back on there.
Yeah, totally. And we can walk through. We've got our banding stuff out here. We can walk through that whole process too. But it's pretty busy, and I'm what we're hoping for is we've got a pine warbler in the tray right now, which is a resident, a year-round warbler here, and so we're all kind of hoping that one goes in the net. It's eating mealworms right now.
All right.
We could get a brave volunteer to let this one go if they want.
Ben,
Sure. All right.
trial by fire.
This one packs.
Let's make sure we get Ben on YouTube getting pecked by a woodpecker.
All right. So same deal. I'll pass it to you in the Vander script.
Yep.
Its talons are pretty sharp and it does. So
Sounds good.
this is not a goldfinch. But this is the Arboretum hazing. A lot of staffers have gone through it. All right, so I'm gonna guide the head for you. Great.
Nice.
Good stuff.
Awesome.
Same deal.
Wow.
Whenever you're ready, you just kind of create a little platform. Oh, there we go. Very nice.
Nice.
Good stuff.
You'll probably see that one around too.
All right. Well, we will come back to you to look at the equipment and the things that you use here in just a little bit. Any of the other sites have any birds that they'd like to share? I did have a bluebird and it disappeared again. And we do also have a request in the chat to have people share ideas for making your yard more bird friendly. So if anyone has any tips that they'd like to suggest for that, obviously providing seed is a really good way to get birds to come to your yard, but there's a lot of other things you can do.
I can chime in on that one. We have a lot of birds visiting in Kid Zone even this time of year, because Kid Zone's our nature play area, and we've planted a lot of natives. And so it helps not only our pollinators, but it helps our songbirds, because their number one food, what they feed their babies, they're caterpillars. And so we've got native trees, we have native bushes, we have native vines, native flowers, very little grass. We have a little grass for the play, needs there, but those native plantings really supports more birds, and the more diversity, including squirrels, you have in your yard. And they also birds need different places for nesting. So like cardinals, we have them that nest in Kid Zone every year. They like vines and they like low bushes. They don't really build real high up. Whereas we've had some summer tanagers, they're not here right now. They're on their migration. They're in Central and South America. They come and they will build their nests higher up in trees because they eat different things. They actually catch bees and hornets in air. So they like to be higher up and have a little different shaped beak. And they all need different sort of nesting materials. And I mentioned earlier about the echinacea, the coneflower, being a favorite food for goldfinches. So the greater diversity of native plantings to your area, and the diversity of nesting materials. And we're also sort of talking about messy gardens. And I said, on your echinacea, instead of your coneflower, instead of deadheading, leave the seed head on, because that is wonderful food for those goldfinches. And messy garden means leaving stems and seed heads around over winter, because that's where our native pollinators are nesting. And again, they're food for our songbirds. So a little mess is good. A brush pile, if you've got an area where you can have a little brush pile, that gives cover and also nesting materials. So sort of those kinds of things will attract more birds naturally. So, and then of course the feeders are great too. I see a towhee.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that Kathy just said. The site that Adam's at now that you can see on the screen right at the moment is Prairie Ridge Eco Station, is the outdoor facility for the museum. And we have a lot of different types of seed that we provide and a lot of different types of feeders, but we also have a lot of native plantings. So all these bushes that you're seeing right now have berries on them at various times of year. We do plant coneflower and other native plants, native wildflowers, and those provide a lot of seeds that a lot of birds really like to eat. And then, we also have, like, anytime you attract other wildlife, you can get birds too. For example, chickadees and tufted titmice really like to incorporate fur into their nests. And so if you have things like rabbits around or other animals that have that really kind of soft, cushy fur, they'll pick it up off the ground and put it into their nests. So anytime you can make your yard more friendly for wildlife in general, you're usually going to get a fair number of birds as well. So many birds on the ground there. All right, I know there's always a question, our Halliburton, Wilmington feeder keeps getting a lot of squirrels on it. Does anyone have suggestions for avoiding squirrels? We generally don't care about the squirrels at Prairie Ridge that much, and I don't really care about the squirrels at home. I'm happy for them to eat my seed, but some people really don't like squirrels. Does anyone have suggestions for avoiding that? There are definitely some feeders that are meant to be anti-squirrel, but so far I've yet to see one that is really truly preventing a squirrel from getting into it if they really want to.
Yeah, ours are technically squirrel proof, but they're not, clearly, because they've been, I've seen squirrels on almost all the feeders. Right now it doesn't look like there's not a squirrel over there right now. But I guess you can buy those squirrel proof feeders and see if they work out. But like Chris was saying, we don't really get the, it looks like my feed went out.
Don't know.
But let me go check that out real quick.
Yeah, there are all kinds of different feeders you can buy that will supposedly prevent squirrels from getting into them. Some of them are on these little spring-loaded spirals, and they'll kind of like fling the squirrel off if they put the weight on it, and they start spinning the feeder, and the squirrel goes flying off. There's others that have like a spring-loaded cover, so that when the squirrel sits on the feeder, the cover covers up the holes, and so the birds can't get, or the squirrels can't get to them. The birds are too light to pull that weight down, but the squirrels will do that. Adam's trying to focus on a bird of prey right now. So it's a little tricky to get birds of prey with long lenses. And one thing I really like to see at bird feeders, and you can see this pretty easily if you pay attention, which is one of the things that doing something like Great Backyard Bird Count can be really great for, is seeing which birds are more dominant over others. There's definitely this hierarchy for who gets to eat seed when. The little birds tend to get the seed last, but there's a lot of them, and they're sneaky and can sneak in there and grab seeds pretty easily. but they're definitely birds that will chase everything away. I know I mentioned that my feeders typically have a mockingbird that dominates them, and I don't have any birds at mine right at the moment. But my mockingbird usually just sits here and watches all the other birds try to come in and chases them away. So that one's definitely the dominant bird at my feeders. Has anyone ever noticed a bird that chases away all their other birds at their site?
We do have sort of a pecking order. At home, I have on my feeders more suet and more woods. So the larger woodpeckers, like the red belly, will chase off the smaller woodpeckers, like the downy woodpeckers. So the downies will kind of sit around in the bushes and trees and sort of wait their turn for when the red bellies are there feeding. So it's sort of like a size dominance thing.
Yeah, the size could definitely matter, but there's kind of a certain level of aggression. And there was a study that came out actually based on some work that the organization that runs the Great Backyard Bird Count did, where they were looking at the dominance of various types of birds. And one of the things that they found were actually that tufted titmice out of the smaller birds are really pretty dominant and can chase off a lot of the other small birds. It's kind of interesting to watch all those different dynamics and those behaviors. What kinds of things are you seeing fly in there, Adam? Keep seeing things fly in for a moment and then fly away.
There's a brown-headed nuthatch that was on the lower left feeder, and there's a bunch of starlings flying around. There's a little nuthatch. They're one of my favorites. They sound like little squeaky toys when they call.
I'm just curious what everyone's favorite bird is in our group here. Anyone want to share their favorite bird? Mine is not one from North Carolina, so I'll let other people go first.
Mine is almost always the red-tailed hawk. I love them. I've seen a couple flying over today. But I also really like brown-headed nuthatches. They're top 5 favorite for me for sure.
I can share mine. Mine isn't normally a North Carolina bird, but we did see some recently. I didn't see them, but recently they were near the coast. Roseate spoonbills. I started birding in Florida because I went to college at Eckerd College in St. Petersburg, so I always enjoyed like seeing those birds. But I'd say my favorite resident bird would be pine warbler. I really like just how they sound and what I get so surprised that they're so brightly colored.
Anyone else want to share a favorite bird?
Well, I love the brown-headed nuthatch too. Their little squeaky, the little meep meep is so cute. But I also love the painted bunting, and they in the Piedmont, they're not year-round residents. They migrate through, so it's one of those rare glimpse birds for me. But it's like rainbow color. All those bright colors are they're so cool looking.
So I'm from the Southwest originally, and my favorite bird is an Arizona native. It's the Gambel's quail. They're one of the quails that have the little top knot feather on the top. I just think they're adorable, and they run around on the ground and have really cute little babies with little racing stripes, and they've got a really great call. And that's really kind of like my childhood bird. It's the first bird I ever knew how to identify, and I just love them. But definitely not North Carolina, and probably not ever making it over here. I don't know if anyone has heard, but there has been a western bird in North Carolina that probably shouldn't be here. It's a mountain bluebird. They're definitely from the west, but one got very terribly off course and is on topsail right now, and a lot of people have been going out to see it. So you do definitely get birds that are out of place occasionally. My favorite bird is never gonna be over here because they don't migrate and they're not really strong flyers. Trying to see if I can tell what the bird on that yellow feeder that you have, Kathy, is.
Yeah, I'm taking a closer look. I'm having a hard time myself. Mm.
Looks like a pine warbler that just came in.
Yes, we've seen those. They like the suet.
Definitely. I get pine warblers on mine. Have had
Yeah.
a pair, a male and a female, that have been hanging out by mine.
And they are really pretty color.
They really are. I know we saw a goldfinch earlier. Anyone have any tips for telling goldfinches and pine warblers apart? Because I know those two get mixed up because they're both yellow birds. I always generally like the striping on the wings is a good thing to look for. A little tough to titmouse there. So I'm curious if anyone's ever noticed any differences. I know in the winter, birds need a lot more fat and a lot more protein than they do other times of year. Do you notice them feeding on your suet more in the winter?
I've noticed that here and at home. And when it gets colder and the weather gets worse, a lot more birds are coming into the feeders, especially the suet. They're really hitting that hard.
And one of my favorite times to bird actually is when it's starting to snow. Because birds just flock to feeders when it starts snowing in North Carolina, at least in the Piedmont. And it's always impressive to see just how many birds you can
Yeah.
see.
That's when you can get your maximum cardinal counts. And we don't get a lot of towhees, but it seems they always come out when the weather gets worse.
Yeah, I think the most cardinals I've ever seen at once was about 75, and it is actually right where Adam is now on a day. It just started snowing. There was no one there except me, and I was so disappointed that no one got to see just how many cardinals there were. I mean, 75, it was crazy.
Hey, we've got some birds in our nets over here at the Arboretum that we're about to extract.
All right, let me switch our spotlight over to you. There we go.
Yeah, we're here. We can pair up on these and then we'll let them go. And we can do. Are we live over here?
We are.
Great. So what we're in front of is mist net right now. So this is how we got all those birds that we were showing. And these nets are about 40 feet in length by 8 feet tall. They're stationary. They don't move. We set them up in the morning. So at our map station, we'll set them up at about 6 in the morning. We'll take them down about 12 in the afternoon. So we'll have them open for about 6 hours. They're really hard to see, and that's the whole point. If you look down the length of the net, you're looking through more of the net, so it's more visible. If you look perpendicular to the net through it, it's a lot harder to see. We're obviously right up on it. And so it's pretty loose. There are 6 of these thicker strands that run across horizontally. And what that does is kind of breaks up the net into different sections. And we kind of just call them shelves. And these are technically trammel lines. And what it allows is to have like excess net kind of sagging down, and it makes it loose enough that if a bird flies into it, it absorbs the impact, it absorbs the flight, and then they settle into one of these pouches. So the first thing we do when we see a bird in the net is we determine what side of the net it's flown in on. And to do that, we kind of open up one of these pockets, and what we're looking for is the belly, in this case, the vent. And so if you can see the belly, you know it's flown in from this side. And so we've got chickadee in here. Rebecca's also working on a chickadee. And so chickadees are really squirmy, very squirmy birds. So it actually might take me a minute to get this one out. We also have some goldfinch behind us. So the order of operations that I like to do for extraction is either get the bird on its belly or its back, and I'm just gently supporting it. And at any point that I can start to take the bird or like work on the bird outside the net, I'm going to do that. But you can kind of think of the extracting process as like taking off a sweatshirt. So you'd want to start with like an arm, and the head, or you could do an arm, head, arm. In this case, I'd like to get the net off of one of the wings, and then I can maybe work it over the head and then get it off the other wing. Sometimes I have to do both wings first. But so in their wings, when their wings are closed, we'll just call it their shoulder. It's really their wrist. It creates this like sinus, this big scoop when the wings are tucked. When you open the wing, that straightens completely out. I have my jacket on. It's harder to illustrate. As the wing opens, that little notch there, that like sinus shape, opens straight out. So what I'm trying to do is open the wing. If I can't open the wing, I have to figure out where the net is caught. And again, chickadees are very squirmy. So I can't take it off. So I'm going to take some of the net off of the bottom of the wing, tips of the feathers. Now I can open up that wing. So what we do, since especially on smaller birds, it's hard to see where the net is. You can blow on the feathers, and it kind of displaces the feathers, so you can see if there's net against the body. So I've got it not completely off one of these wings yet. I've got a chunk of it. Sometimes it just takes a couple of tries. So I can see. Just basically like a toothpick or something like that to get the net off. We have some goldfinch behind us in the other net, which are, like I mentioned before, really good demo birds. So I just got the rest of that net off of that one wing. The whole time I'm just kind of pinching it like in a triangle. I'm supporting its two fingers on the side, and then a finger on the top. So getting a little squirmy. Again, some birds are more fussy than others. And they're like the perfect size to fit in the net loop. So the mesh size of the loop is like chickadee size. All right, we're making progress. I know it's really hard to see. So I think it is just double check. Back here. All right, so it's in front of the head. I'm pinching the net, and I want to bring it around to the back of the head. So just like when we take off a shirt, like you want to take it off back to front. Same idea here. I'm just trying to get the net, take it off from back to front. A little more around this wing here. I'm about to slide that off, just like a sleeve. So again, there's just a bunch right in front of the head. So it's biting the net, which doesn't help. So I want to bring it behind the head. The wind's blowing too, so I'm just kind of moving with the net here. Very chatty, has a lot to say about this process. There we go. Just kind of pinching some from the front. Come on. Trying to bring it to the back in sections. So it's just matted. The head is the perfect size for this mesh. This is a 36 millimeter pole mesh size. And so this is the mesh size. This net mesh size is what we use for songbirds, passerines. When we band owls, we would use a larger mesh size because it's a larger bird. So I'd say that's like a intermediate, moderate difficulty extraction. They're just notoriously squirmy birds. The longer they sit in the net, the more opportunity they have to squirm and get stuck. So most extractions are a lot quicker. But yeah, here's our Carolina chickadee. Very bitey, very feisty little birds. You wouldn't think. And so these are not dimorphic. So I would have to take some measurements over there to determine if it was a male or a female, and also to determine its age.
A chickadee and not a black cap chickadee?
Yeah, good question. So the size is one factor. So I guess our black caps are bigger, and also the black caps will have white on these feathers here. So they're secondary coverts.
Would you expect to see black cap chickadees in Asheville?
Not in Asheville, but in higher elevation. So we've got some disjunct relic populations of black cap chickadees. So there are these Appalachian black cap chickadees, and they only breed in much higher elevation. So I'm sure you guys can see this bird's bouncing up and down a little bit. It's a little cold out here. So the whole time we're handling wildlife, if it starts to show signs of stress, if its eyes start to slowly close or blink, starts to puff up, or if it looks like it's out of breath, we don't even band it. We just let it go. So I'm going to do that with this one. It's obviously feisty. It's been biting, and it's not showing like extreme signs of stress, but just for demonstration purposes, it wouldn't be biting me. I think we'll let this little one go. Jonathan, do you want to let it go?
Sure. Sorry, Ben.
Sorry, Ben.
And so we'll actually walk it. We'll walk it around the net just so it doesn't fly right back.
Straight back in.
Should we just release these two also?
Okay, little Carolina chickadee. Here we go.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, we
Another cardinal.
goldfinch.
So we have a couple of questions that I'd like to answer.
Yeah.
One is if there's a resource for identifying bird calls, and there are multiple, but one of the really great ones right now that they just added to the app is the Merlin Bird ID app, which you can also use to identify the birds that you see. And so you can use your phone to record a quick little clip, and it will run it through a comparative algorithm to see which birds it matches to. And so that can be a really great one to use. Really, really simple. And
What did you say?
really pretty good. Right, looks like we got another bird, the Arboretum crew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look,
So.
it's a hermit thrush.
Oh, no way. Go on the net.
Oh, so close.
Yeah, we just had a hermit thrush there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you got an adult male
Mhm.
non-breeding too.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Rebecca. She works at she used to work at the Arboretum for a long time. She was a technician with us in 2020 and also came and worked with us last year. She's worked at other banding stations, but she's been with Wild Bird and the Arboretum for quite a while and has become quite the bander herself. So I'm going to let her talk about this one.
Yeah, sure. So another American goldfinch right here. What Tony and I were just talking about is, as he mentioned earlier, when we have birds in hand, it's the best way to be able to sex them reliably, particularly in something like the winter seasons when you don't have a bright yellow goldfinch that is obviously a male. We can look at these characters a little bit closer. So I was looking here on this bird first, and called a molt limit, which Tony might have mentioned. So all birds, for the most part, are going to molt in the fall. And depending on how old that bird is, the molts are a little bit different. So let's say we have a goldfinch that hatched in last July. In the fall, it's going to do its first molt, but it's not going to molt all its feathers. An older bird is going to, in the fall, is going to molt its entire body of feathers. And so when you have a first year bird that does that partial molt, is what we call it, it is then going to weave differences in the feather tracks. And so we're able to see those and using the differences in the feather color, the feather shape, even the wear, if those birds are migrants and they have to go a long distance there and back between the tropics and here, we can use those characters to determine how old this bird is. So for example, right here, I think, Tony, was our goldfinch earlier? Did it have a molt limit?
No,
No.
That was an adult female. So that was after second year female.
Mhm.
And so you have now a
After second year male.
male.
So if we look at these feathers right here, so we have our primary feathers here, our secondary feathers in here, those are our flight feathers. And then each of those tracks of feathers have something called coverts associated with them. So these little feathers here above our primaries are our primary coverts, and then our secondary coverts are above the secondaries. All of these feathers have this nice uniform black color. And that continues on to the primary coverts. Typically, when we have birds with molt limits, those first year birds will replace the secondary or greater coverts here, their body plumage, and then these coverts up at the top. But a first year bird will not replace any of its flight feathers or the primary coverts for the most part. So this bird, because all of these feathers are nice and glossy black, they look uniform. I don't see any differences between them. We know this bird has replaced all of those feathers at the same time. And so this has to be an older bird because there's no molt limits.
And why are we calling this one a male and the other one a female? They're both after second year
Yeah.
birds. And I don't know if we could show the body plumage. Or if
Yeah.
you can see.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you see it
Here.
over there.
Uh-huh. So we have this nice bright yellow shoulder patch, which again, in a breeding bird, they would be entirely bright yellow, but the females won't have this nice bright yellow color so much.
We have another one we can compare. We've
Yeah.
got two here next
Wow.
to each other. So as Rebecca was saying, like not all birds have breeding and non-breeding plumage, but these do, which makes it really fun for aging them throughout the year. So this bird's gonna be like totally all the brown body feathers are gonna be bright yellow, just like these little lesser coverts on the shoulder there. But that jet black wing is what lets us know it's also a male. And the beak color even changes. And so, yeah, we had an adult female before, and that wing wasn't as jet black as this male, but it was still black. Check out this bird. We can see next to Rebecca's. We'll keep them a little apart. This wing's just straight up brown. There's not really much black going on in there. If you look right here, these inner secondary coverts, those are black. And so it's replacing those very slowly. So this is a second year bird, meaning it was born last summer. And this is a second year female. So even a young male will still have some yellow in it. But this doesn't have any yellow in it. It just has a couple black feathers there. Yeah, really cool. And also, doesn't always fit the bill, but we can take a look at these rectrices, the tail feathers. So on Rebecca's bird, they should be more rounded and not as pointed. And on my bird, the younger bird, it's really subjective, and you always want to use like a combination of characteristics, a bunch of supporting characteristics. But if you look closely, like these have distinct little tips. It's really hard to see, I know, and this is all really minute detail, but hers are a lot more rounded on the tail feathers there. And show body plumage. We can get them in a photographer's picture.
I'll kill you. Hurt.
And so here's our little lady. And when the wings closed, you can even sometimes see, oh, she's got something to say. She's a little feisty. You can see those black feathers are just coming in on her, close to the body, whereas Rebecca's bird.
We got a cardinal.
Oh, awesome.
Oh no.
So yeah, these are the goldfinch. Not very gold right now.
Oh,
So we've got a lot of birds in the net. We should probably let these go and take care of them. So we'll let them go together.
1, 2, 3. Bye, guys.
All right. While you're getting a few more birds out of the net, we had a question earlier that I'd like to ask everyone in the group, which is, what is your spark bird? So which bird was the one that got you into birds in the first place? Anyone want to share?
You are good.
So yeah, I think that my spark bird was probably the hooded warbler. Still probably my favorite songbird. I was in a ornithology class in college at Hocking College in southeastern Ohio, and I didn't quite get the birding bug at that point. So wasn't as interested in birds as I was in snakes, turtles, things like that. But in our class, we were looking for birds. It was a field class. And just about 10 feet from the entire group, this hooded warbler just flew in, sat there, and hung out for several minutes and just let us watch it. And that was just incredible, being able to see this little bird that had traveled such a far distance just a few months before. And they're just beautiful birds. So I'd say that's my spark.
Anyone else want to share a spark bird?
So I grew up, my family had a bird feeder we set out back behind the kitchen window. So we'd sit at the dining room table, bird watching, and we had sort of competing woodpeckers. So we had the red-bellied woodpecker, and we also had red-headed woodpeckers. We had a lot of variety of trees in the backyard, and they would kind of compete over because they're about the same size. So they would come in and cluck, 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 and bob their heads and kind of have this bluff battle going on as to who was going to have rights to the feeder. So we always have fun watching them. So I think the woodpeckers, all of them, because I just think they're all really cool. That's kind of what got me hooked.
I know for me, I'm an entomologist by training, so I'm really into insects. And I know when I was in grad school and studying insects for my research, I didn't really care about birds at all. A lot of my family members are really big birders. So if I ever wanted to know what a bird was, I just asked one of my family members and they'd just tell me. So I never really cared that much about it. But when I moved to North Carolina and started the job that I have now, part of my job was getting people to do citizen science like we're doing with the Great Becker Bird Count. And I got really a lot more into watching birds, but I think the very first one that got me excited about it was the red-breasted nuthatch. I had never seen them before, and it was a year that they were in North Carolina. We don't get them necessarily every year. And there were a lot of them. And I love nuthatches. I think they're adorable. They've got really great behaviors. And so those were the ones that got me actually excited about watching birds. And I would still say I like my bugs way more than I like birds, but I think birds are pretty amazing now. And they're really fun to watch. Do you have a spark bird, Jessica?
I would say hawks, just because they're easier to see. I think it got me hooked on just birds of prey in general. But I'd say we have red-shouldered hawks here a lot, and I think that was probably one that I got hooked on. And then once I started to learn the smaller birds, that definitely helped with the learning the calls and all of that. So yeah, that's what I would say about mine.
Excellent. And Adam, do you have a spark bird? One that got you into birding?
I think I have two. So growing up, we had bird feeders always. And I had a common feeder bird poster on the back of my door. And I always thought that the American goldfinch was the prettiest bird. So growing up and early on, that would definitely be my spark bird that got me interested in birds just to start with. But then as an adult, I got back into birding after working at a nonprofit education place called the Piedmont Wildlife Center. And they have rehabilitated raptors that can't be released. They're injured in some way. And I got to work with a red-tailed hawk. I mentioned the red-tailed hawk's my favorite bird. And it's for this reason. I got to hold one. I got to be really close to it, to get the programs. And I just fell in love with being that close to a predator, a hunter, a flying animal. It was just such a cool experience that is what got me back into loving birds and wanting to pay more attention to them in the wild.
All right, you've got quite a few birds hanging around that feeder you're looking at there. Adam, you want to say
Yeah.
anything about any of those?
Yeah, the bird out in front is a brown thrasher. It's the first one I've seen today. That brings me to 24 species. I've seen, looks like there's a white-throated sparrow behind it. Let's see if I can focus in on it. Hopping around. Eastern towhee. They're one of the really obvious male or female birds. The males have dark black on their backs, and the females have a nice chocolate brown. Every now and then I keep seeing the white-crowned sparrow, but we only have one, and we have like 100 white-throated sparrows. So it's always hard to tell.
So I think the white-crowned sparrow that we have at Prairie Ridge is a good example of a bird that will bring birders to a place. Anytime you have a kind of more rare bird and you report it on something like eBird, birders show up to come see that bird. So we have dozens of people that come just to see that white-crowned sparrow every day at Prairie Ridge. And a few years ago, we had a American bittern, which is the mostly coastal bird at this time of year, that was overwintering in our pond for a few years. And the first time that showed up, we had like 1,000 people show up the first day trying to come find that bird. So people get really excited about this, and they will go places where they can see interesting birds and look for interesting birds in places like eBird, where people are reporting the things that they see in kind of near real time. And so if you ever do have a bird that is something that is really exciting and you're in a public place, that's great. But just keep that in mind if you're ever at your home. I know last winter there was a type of thrush from, I believe, Canada, like northern part of the US, that isn't normally in North Carolina. It was in someone's yard in Cary, and they had dozens and dozens and dozens of birders that were showing up in their yard every day and coming to look for that bird, and they were fine with it. So if you are willing to welcome people to come see an interesting bird at your place, definitely report it, but just keep that in mind if that's something that you don't want to have happen.
That was the varied thrush.
Yes.
I think they're out like really far out west. And I don't think the homeowners were birders. They just knew some of the birds in their yard, and they're like, this one looks different. And I went to go visit it, and I got to talk to the guy. And he had people visiting from Florida. Like, people were driving hundreds or almost 1,000 miles just to see this one bird that wasn't supposed to be in this one person's yard.
Yeah, of course, those are kind of local examples. That mountain bluebird that's on the coast right now, is the same kind of thing. People are really excited about it, and they're traveling pretty long distances to see that bird because it's not one that you can see in North Carolina usually. But you probably heard there was national news about the sea eagle that was hanging out in Maine. It flew over from Russia across the ocean, across the entire US and hung out in Maine for a month or so. So a lot of people got to see this giant eagle that was not supposed to be there. So it definitely happens. And then people share it on something like eBird, like you do with the Great Backyard Bird Count, and then lots of people get really excited about it. Keep seeing doves running around back there too. Doves are funny. You almost always have two of them. So if you see one, you should look around and see if you can find another. All right. Just have some sparrows on mine. Like a chipping sparrow. Sparrows to me are the hardest birds to identify because they're all mostly about the same size and about the same colors. And so you really need to start looking at what are called field marks. So those are the really distinctive markings on the birds that help you tell one apart from the other. So I get 3 or 4 species of sparrows in my yard and have to tell those 4 kind of drab brown birds apart. What just flew in there? That's a yellow-rumped warbler. Oh, and he flew away too quickly to really get a good look at his rump. Yellow-rumped warblers are named yellow-rumped warblers because they have a yellow patch on their butt. You might be able to see it. He flew back in. It's like right in between their wings at the base of their tail, right where it connects their body. The other bird is a song sparrow. One of the other sparrows that I get a lot of. All right, we'll move back over to the zoo feeders and see if we get anything interesting there. Not right at the moment, but sure we'll get more things.
So a chickadee.
Yep.
There we go.
Chickadees are so cute.
They are.
It's hard not to love those really little birds.
Exactly. And they're feisty. We have a make your own pine cone bird feeder station set up on the front porch of our barn and kids zone, our play area. And if we're not careful, because we've got the seed in a tray for rolling the pine cone in, the little chickadees will just land on the front porch and help themselves to the food in the tray. So we're they'll get pretty close.
Yeah, we do have a tray feeder on the deck that Adam's standing on right now too, and the chickadees will hang out on that. It's 3 feet from people.
Sure, yeah.
A lot of times, and they have no fear, just come right in and get the seed.
Yep. And we have a couple of we had put in some speaker niches on our front porch. So the Carolina wrens love every summer to come and build nests there. So, and at first thought it was like, okay, they're not very smart building their nests so close to people. But we have a lot of rat snakes in Kids Zone too. And they're really good climbers. So I'm like, maybe they are pretty smart putting their nest there.
That actually brings up a really good point. Bird feeders can attract snakes. And of course, squirrels can be an issue, as we've talked about earlier. There are a variety of different structures that you can put on the poles for your feeders to keep snakes away from them. And likewise, if you ever have bird boxes, nest boxes, it becomes even more important. They're called baffles. Some of them are kind of like umbrella shaped, and others are kind of cylindrical. But the idea is that a snake or something that's crawling up the pole climbs up, hits the top of the baffle, and then they can't get around the baffle to get the rest of the way up. So that's a structure that a lot of people will put on their feeders to keep out things that they don't want around.
Got another one of our woodpeckers on there right now on the suet. That's a downy woodpecker, so that's our smallest woodpecker. I didn't see any red, so I think that's a female.
Downies are our smallest woodpecker in North Carolina. Actually, I think it might be in the US. Is that right, Adam? I know you just did a presentation on woodpeckers.
Yeah, Downies are the smallest, and I think all of North America. I just had another red belly woodpecker. We just immediately left as soon as I started talking.
All right, the Arboretum crew has a cardinal, so I'm going to switch back over to them here for a moment so we can get a good up close look. All right, bring on the cardinal.
We are getting him over here. All right.
All right. We've got one of our more charismatic birds, and I'm sure all of you will recognize. So here we have our northern cardinal, our state bird. And this is one of those birds we've been talking about that are dimorphic. So the males and the females are going to look different. We have our male is hanging around up here somewhere, so maybe he'll pop in a little bit. We have a nice female right here, and she's an older bird. The reason I can tell that, again, I'm looking at the wing for those kinds of molt limits. And cardinals are a little unique. I mentioned earlier when I was talking about molt that first year birds, they only molt some of those feathers in that first molt, whereas birds that are adults or after their second year are going to molt all of them at the same time. Cardinals are weird in that bird's first molt, in their first fall, they can actually molt some of those primaries, which again, most other birds don't do. And they can actually molt all of their feathers. So past like the second year, we actually really can't tell how old they are unless they've been banded, and we can refer to those banding records to actually know. Tony, can you talk about Walter?
Oh yeah, we can definitely talk about Walter.
Yeah.
So Jonathan named Walter back in 2018. We banded Walter down in the Azalea Garden in 2018, which is our first year at that station.
He's a male northern cardinal.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, I didn't get that. I should preface.
So male northern cardinal, and we banded him as an after second year, so an adult bird. And then we've each subsequent year we have caught him. We didn't catch him last year, but we caught him in 2020, and so he's just kind of become like a local celebrity down there. And we've caught him each year. So yeah, I think the last time we got him he was at least 5 years old. 3 years later, or 2 years later. So if he's still out there, we hope to get him again. And
if you're listening to this, Walter.
But I assume you brought him up because you can't tell the age. You know, once that they have a complete molt and everything looks the same, you can't tell the age apart. And so then we refer to that band record. Hopefully we see Walter soon.
Yeah. Absolutely. Another fun thing about cardinals that are younger, so if we were in the summer, is that juveniles are going to have a black beak as opposed to this nice bright red beak that we see on most of our older birds. So another little fun fact. So I'm probably gonna let this bird go. Does anybody want to release the cardinal? Yeah. Really? All right, so I'll give it to you.
So now you're all kind of laughing about releasing the cardinal.
Yeah. It hurts. It hurts.
That was mean.
Here, one sec. They know how to hit you where it hurts. I'll take the fall. All right.
That was fun.
Oh, look at that.
Yes. So sometimes they'll do that. They don't, when they're in the hand for so long, they don't realize that they're free. So
you can just give them a little poke on a little butt.
You kind of lift up on the tail too.
Maybe he's just yours now.
Yeah, you can take him home.
So, yeah.
The friendly Phoebe said you were cool.
Oh, there he goes. Yeah, they're friends.
Do you want to? this will be really quick. So we've already had a bunch of goldfinch, but we haven't had this one yet. So I think we first had an adult female, and then we had an adult male. And then and so now we have a young male. So we'll now have had both sexes and all ages. If that makes sense. So we know this is a young male because it has a fair amount of yellow on it. Some yellow on the rump here, on the back, and the wing is also just jet black. It's just really dark, darker than a female wing. And we can tell from certain feather tracks here. Rebecca was going over this a bit. So these secondary coverts, so these primary coverts are slightly lighter in color. And then there's a cool thing with goldfinch, which is helpful, especially since they have breeding and non-breeding plumage. It can be tricky to age them. But their carpal covert here, and without going into too much detail, it's just this single little feather here, and it's really subtle, but it has some light, like buffy edging on it. And it basically is separating these secondary coverts, which have big white edging on it, and these primary coverts, which don't have anything. And these primary coverts are a little lighter brown. And so we're going to say that this molt limit exists at this carpal covert. So it's just a fun, really helpful trick that I wish like all birds had. It's like, all right, look at this one feather, and you can tell the age just by this one feather. But most birds don't make it that easy. And then also you can see that the Rex, the tail feathers are really pointed, super pointed. So we had that hatchier female before, and she was just totally brown, or second year female rather. We'll just say young. The juvenile female is totally brown, and this juvenile male is very black wings, and has some yellow in it. So now we've had both sexes and each sex in both ages, which is pretty cool. Liz, do you want to let this bird go? It's my girlfriend Liz. She works at Wild Bird as well. She's our webmaster and seasonal technician and expert goldfinch whisperer. We've got all of the possibilities now. And this is why I just love goldfinch for like education and demo purposes. They're just so calm. And same deal. He just thinks that he's still, he obviously is being handled, but he doesn't quite know that he's free yet. Take some encouragement. They're just very, very, it can be very adorable. I was gonna say pathetic. It's not that kind of thing. It's just like,
they're cute.
Very cute. We've got a really special bird up next if there's time. If we have time.
Yeah, if you want to do one more, go ahead.
Here, you could make sure this doesn't blow. So, okay. The name, see if anyone guesses. This bird, it also has a relict disjunct population, like we were talking about with the black-capped chickadees. This bird breeds up in super high elevation, so probably 4,500 feet and above, maybe almost exclusively like 5,000 to 6,000 feet in elevation. The rest of this bird's breeding range is super far north. We will have them regardless. We will have them in the winter right now in low elevation, but they don't breed in low elevation. So we're at about 2,000 foot here. They don't breed in low elevation. They'll only be down here in the winter. So that's some clues for you guys. And just heard the pine warbler singing in the background. So haven't had any bird, not even anything related to this bird yet. And so I'll show you guys. See the body plumage here. I'm trying to get it in the sun. I'll show you the breast. And any guesses? I don't know if it. I don't know the delay. If someone can guess, call something in. Well, So it's losing down feathers, very normal. They molt down feathers, year round. It's not like their flight feathers. All right. Well, if anyone guessed hermit thrush, you are correct. It's just losing down feathers. So yeah, this is a hermit thrush. Really cool thrush, really pretty song. And again, just kind of breed up in the boreal forests here. So a great, it's a thrush. You can tell right away. It's got all the speckling in the breast and in the throat. Big black eyes, forest dwelling, ground dwelling bird that has those big eyes to see in low light. And then we could check out this. So, during migration and whatnot, if you got a lot of thrushes moving through, it can sometimes be tricky. But this two-tone coloration, you got this really rich cinnamon colored tail, and then this kind of olive washed body color on its back and wings. So look for that in the field. It's really nice and obvious in the sun here. But that two-tone is the best way to ID hermit thrush in the field. So yeah, really exciting. We don't get them often. So for instance, since we're at 2,000 feet at our MAP station, our summer breeding station, we don't get them. They don't breed this low in elevation. We just get them in the winter. But pretty cool stuff. So these are monomorphic birds. So there's no difference in plumage between sexes. So I actually have the book pulled open, and it doesn't always work, but through banding and through general records, people will take measurements of the wings, and then you can have inequalities. So males will have I'll just read it off. So we're gonna measure the wing. The caveat I was trying to give is that it doesn't always work out, and it usually doesn't, just because there's so much overlap in wing length. But it says right here, I'm just gonna read off the book. So females have a wing length anywhere from 78 millimeters to 103 millimeters, and males have a wing length of 81 millimeters to 110 millimeters. So we'll just say that anything greater than 103 is a male, and anything less than 81 is a female, since there's so much overlap. And so I've just got this ruler here. It's got a nice broad edge to it, and I'm just tucking it under the wing, and I'm not flattening the wing out. I want it to kind of be in its natural resting position. And I'm just butting up, we'll call it the shoulder. It's really their wrist. I'm just butting that up to that stop. And we will read down the length here. And it looks like 92, say that's 92. So I've got 92 millimeters, which guess what is right in between. And it like always seems to work out that way. Yep, 92, because anything less than 81 is a female. Anything greater than 103 is a male.
So it could be either.
Yeah, so during the breeding season, if this bird was nesting, we could check for signs of breeding. So males will have an enlarged cloaca, so cloacal protuberance, and I'm going to blow on this bird so you can see, and this is how we check. And then females will have a brood patch. So just like chickens, they molt their feathers. They have an absent of feathers on their breast and their belly, and that's for direct skin contact to the eggs for effective, efficient heating and temperature regulation of the eggs. So again, no signs of breeding this time of year. I'm just kind of showing you, if we were caught this bird in the breeding season and the wing didn't measure up, how else we would be able to determine the sex. Something else we do is we check in the furcula, which is basically this hollow in their throat, or their like their equivalent of the sternum rather. And we can check for fat, and we can see it's just another piece of data that we record. So we'll do a fat count. And so this bird actually has a little bit of fat, which is good. I mean, it's healthy. So that's pretty full. So what we're looking for there is like the yellow color and how full that hollow is. And so that's pretty full. We would give that at least a 3 or 4, which is great. It's a healthy bird.
Hey,
Yeah.
Tony.
Yeah.
We could use your help getting a couple birds out.
Great.
Of that.
Yeah. So
Whenever
we'll,
you're-
I guess we'll transition here. Hey, good to see you. You want to let a bird go? This is a really special bird. I think so.
You gotta put all your stuff down and you have to listen to all of the directions very carefully,
This
okay?
bird's really calm, not bitey or anything. Very sweet bird. So you see how I have it in my hand right now? What all you're gonna want to do is make a peace sign. So take 2 fingers like this, right? So the head of the bird is gonna sit on in between those fingers, right? Right in between. And so you close your fingers when the head's there. And you take the rest of your fingers, you make. You'll just get the head sorted first in between those fingers, right? All right, now take the rest of your fingers and create a cage. So just have a whole bird like that. Perfect. And whenever you're ready, you can point it that way. Take your other hand, put a platform under that bird. A little closer so its feet can kind of like sit on your hand like a stage. So you can put it up a little higher so the feet of the bird are touching your hand. So it's got a little launch pad. Exactly.
They're not that sharp. It'll be like a
I'll
little
put it
tickle.
on my hand. How about that? And then whenever you're ready, you let go. Good job.
All right, we are getting a little closer to our noon stop time. So I'm curious for the people who are on the call here, if you have any favorite bird facts that you'd like to share. It can be really any sort of bird fact. Doesn't have to be specific to North Carolina birds, but anyone have a good fun fact? Gonna cycling through the feeders again, see what we have.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Chickadees and titmice, they like to hang out together sometimes.
Yep. That is actually a known thing that happens in the winter in particular. You know, a lot of birds will kind of bunch up a little bit more in the winter than they do other times of year. You know, in the breeding season, birds don't necessarily want to be that
Right.
close to each other. But in the winter, they're willing to put up with a lot more. So you get mixed flocks where you'll have, you know, chickadees and titmice together, and really large flocks of some things. You know, in the winter, you'll get really big groups of those European starlings that Adam showed off earlier. Brown-headed cowbirds form really big
Oh, yes.
flocks as well. And actually, that's one of my favorite fun facts, that brown-headed cowbirds are brood parasites. So
Yes.
they actually lay their eggs in other birds' nests and do not take care of their eggs themselves. And it does usually result, unfortunately, in the demise of its nest mates. And so the parent will probably lose most of their own chicks, but they are native. And so they're protected federally, and they have to be, if you ever find cowbird eggs in a nest that you're monitoring, you do have to leave them there. You cannot remove them because they are native birds. But they're really cool that they've evolved this process of taking care of their young, where they're giving them to other birds and having other birds raise them.
They at home, I'm more of a rural setting, and the cowbirds will come in, like you say, in a flock, and kind of take over my feeders.
Yeah, I mean, there could be hundreds of them in a flock together, and they're pretty aggressive. They can definitely chase off a lot of other things. You know, some of the big woodpeckers and other things might be able to kind of sneak in there and get the cowbirds to move on, but most of the other things have to just wait until the cowbirds are done.
Right. Fortunately, the cowbirds tend to go for more the general feeders and kind of leave the suet alone. So the woodpeckers are like, okay.
Yeah.
We do at home. I have a fence line with thistle feeders on it as well. That's where all my goldfinches hang out.
Nice. I don't think I've ever seen a goldfinch in
Looks
my
like
yard.
we have our own hermit thrush out here at Prairie Ridge.
All right.
I've seen it a couple times. This is the first time I've actually got a real good look at it. And while I'm sharing, one of my favorite bird facts is that blue jays can imitate the sound of red-shouldered hawks, and it's very convincing.
Yes, and we have a red-tailed hawk animal ambassador behind Kid Zone, and we have a blue jay that does a dead-on red-tailed hawk impression. So we have to put eyes on the blue jay to make sure that's who it is. Amazing.
One thing I love about blue jays is that they're technically corvids, and so they're really closely related to crows and ravens. And so they're very smart, like all other corvids, but they're the really bright, colorful corvid compared to the others. You know, they tend to be mostly black, except for the blue jays. I think hermit thrushes are a good example of a bird that's kind of the standard bird, you know, brown and white, but they're still really beautiful, you know, really striking birds.
People are actually more familiar with thrushes than they think, because bluebirds and robins are both also in the thrush group. So there are a lot of birds that their name doesn't always tell you what group they're in, but the thrushes are more common than people think.
And then towhees are sparrows, correct? I believe.
Yep, towhees
Really
and
big, really big
juncos.
sparrows. And actually, these relationships between these different birds are really important when you go to use something like a field guide, because where they are in the field guide depends on how they're related to other birds. So if you're looking for a towhee where you might kind of expect it to be with the kind of more medium-sized birds in the middle of a field guide, you're going to be in the wrong spot because the sparrows are in the back. And so you definitely need to kind of get to know how these different things are related to each other to be able to figure out where to look in a field guide. But speaking of field guides, does anyone have a favorite one that they would really like to recommend? I'm partial to the Sibley one just because I really like the art in it, but there's a lot of field guides out there and most of them are really pretty good.
I'm also partial to Sibley's, I think also because of the art.
And pretty much all field guides will have the same kind of information, and then they usually give you some clues about how to identify the bird. So you're looking at field marks, you know, those distinctive markings on the birds that tell you which species you're looking at. A lot of times they'll tell you a little bit about habitat and behavior that can be clues. They'll show pictures of different ages and stages of the birds, and usually have a map. So most of them will have the same kind of information. There's also a field guide that Peterson puts out just for feeder birds. So if you really want to watch birds at feeders, that one can be a really great one for things that come to feeders. So they talk about the different types of seeds and different types of feeders available and what types of birds attract them, but also have really good big pictures of the feeder birds that you find in the eastern US. So that one can be a really great one if that's going to be your kind of primary bird watching experience. We did get a question about if it's better to let birds find their own food rather than getting accustomed to feeders. And that is a really good question. I don't personally have a very good answer for that. Anyone else want to tackle that one?
Well, I've always sort of had my feeders up winter and then early spring, kind of to get them through that first nesting season. And then once, you know, it's full blown summer, there's so much natural food out there that I take them down. Because there's so many insects and so many flowers blooming, so many berries and whatnot, that then I'll let them handle it. Another thing about having feeders, so that we're sort of setting up an artificial situation, is feeder hygiene. Because like, for instance, last year, there was an illness going around, particularly affecting the finches, where they would get conjunctivitis, and it spread through bird feeders. So giving your bird feeders a good clean at least once a month is a really great idea. So, you know, it's sort of up to individual taste is how long you keep them going. But I think supporting them in the winter is not such a bad thing. And it's a great, I mean, bird watching is such a great hobby. And they're so much easier to see this time of year without the leaves.
And if you do plant enough things in your yard that produce enough seeds, you know, you could potentially get away with not. I mean, birds will figure out what they need to do, whether you provide them seed or not. They'll figure it out. But if you want birds in your yard and don't want to have feeders up, you know, providing those sources of seeds that you can plant in your garden is always a really worthwhile thing to do. Anything that you can do to encourage insects to be in your yard will also help encourage birds to be there. So having a really kind of natural native yard can really help support the birds without necessarily needing to provide seed. All right, looks like we've got just a couple more minutes here. I love those Danny woodpeckers. They're so cute. All right, so just if you were not at the very beginning of this program, you know, we are part of a collaborative group called Science Across North Carolina. We're a group of 40 or 50 different organizations. It's pretty big collaborative where we are trying to encourage people to get involved in scientific research that you can do anywhere in the state. And so this is our first big event of the year. We're going to have 3 more. The next one will be the City Nature Challenge in April. But we're just really hoping to get more people involved in these kinds of opportunities. So this particular event, this Birds Across North Carolina that we're doing, is part of the Great Backyard Bird Count international effort to census bird populations. And so this is a really important opportunity for bird researchers to learn more about how many birds are out there, what population sizes look like this year relative to the past 25 years that they've been doing this. And all you have to do if you want to participate is watch birds for 15 minutes anywhere that you happen to be, or you can watch longer, and make a checklist. So how many total birds you see of each species that you know how to identify. If you don't know how to identify something, you just leave it off your list, and that's totally fine. You just want to submit the ones that you know how to ID. And then we are asking people to submit through the Carolina Bird Atlas, which is part of the eBird system. So if you go into eBird and search for Carolina Bird Atlas, or you just look up Carolina Bird Atlas in Google or whatever search engine you use, you can go to their homepage and get to their portal. That way we are tagging our birds for use by Carolina-centered bird researchers as well. All right, any last minute comments anyone on our leadership team here wants to make before we call it a day?
Good.
Hey, I just wanted to share, in case it's not been mentioned before, that you know, we've got this program called Eco Explorer that is open for ages 5 to 12. It's currently our ornithology or bird season, and so kids right now can be working on their ornithology badge, and we even have a special woodpecker badge for some kids that might be a little bit older. So you can go to ecoexplore.net to be able to register. And not only do you get to take cool pictures of birds, but you get to share those with scientists. And to say thank you, we give you points that you can trade for binoculars, wildlife cameras, bug nets, all kinds of cool stuff. So hopefully we've got some younger people out there that might be able to help the scientists out. So go to ecoexplore.net if you're interested in doing that.
All right. Well, we are going to wrap up here. I'll leave you with this red-bellied woodpecker as our final image here. Thank you so much to everyone that has joined us today. We are really happy to have you here watching birds with us. Hope you got to see some cool things, and we're looking at starlings again. And we really hope that you will take part in the Great Backyard Bird Count by making a checklist of birds that you've watched over a 15-minute period or longer. So thank you all so much for joining us. We are really, really excited to have you here with us today, and hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.